and Matty's exclusive podcast.
Well, this is a little bit different. Let's dial in for this one. The first ever exclusive behind-the-scenes Gina and Matty podcast. Hi, guys.
Hi, woohoo! I'm so excited to be doing this where we don't have to make a story last 3 minutes or 2 minutes even.
I know. It's the story of my life.
You've been talking to my husband. He's like, yeah, get on with it.
I usually like to be super prepared when we do stuff.
Mm-hmm, I know you do.
I have absolutely no idea what we're doing.
You don't need to worry because I've prepped something. So I've been inspired by that 90s movie Sliding Doors that starred Gwyneth Paltrow.
Where everyone then tried to cut their hair short because she did and no one looked as good as Gwyneth with that haircut.
No one could get that haircut. And she was with Brad Pitt at the time, I think.
Yeah, and they looked the same. And then there's this theory. CJ's here as well. Hi, CJ.
Hello.
Can you Google,
Yep.
seeing we got long form, can you Google Brad Pitt's haircuts mirror his girlfriend's? So there's this theory that Brad Pitt that would style his hair the same way as his girlfriends at the time. So there's like photos of him with people that he was dating and they had similar hair. Have you found it?
I've got it.
Okay.
Oh, my God.
Show Jay.
Please show me.
I'm coming around.
Okay.
So Brad Pitt, all the way from sort of Legends of the Fall time through to...
Oh, my God.
So who have you got? Who can you see?
Well, I can see him with Gwyneth Paltrow.
Similar hair?
Yes, Angelina Jolie, long hair. Jennifer Aniston, he's gone sort of a bit wild while her hair's looking sort of long and wild.
So he got the male version of the Rachel.
Oh, my God.
He went in and asked for the Rachel cut.
He really does.
Yeah.
That's crazy. He's already good looking enough. He doesn't need to copy the girls.
There's a new, Brad Pitt, seriously, he's like a fine red wine.
Him and George Clooney.
Oh, George, okay, we'll get to George in a sec. But Brad filmed this TV commercial last week. I think it hit the screens in New Zealand, and he was riding a motorbike, and he's got the grey facial hair. And I was like, oh, dude, you're still so ridiculously good looking.
Yeah. Well, something happens, I think, with men. Sometimes the grey and the wrinkles and stuff is even sexier somehow. Not fair on the girls.
Nah. I wouldn't say Dame Judi Dench's doing it for me these days.
No,
but,
that's the thing, right? That's the thing.
But George, just back onto George quickly. Did you see what happened when he dyed his hair?
No.
Oh, okay. Google. CJ, right. George he's filming something, right? Whether it's a new TV show or a movie, and he's dyed his hair. And he's been going grey since he was in ER.
And he looks great.
And he's always been a silver fox, right? And he
love him. He's been a bit salt and pepper.
This has made him look about 100. He looks like those guys you see at the shopping centre and you're like, dude, you dye your hair.
And you do it yourself, please don't.
Look at it.
Oh, no, go back to the grey. It must be for a part
It
in
is
the
for
movie.
100% is for a part, and he's spoken about it.
He still looks fabulous.
No, I reckon he looks worse with that hair than he does when he has the silver rockin'.
Yeah.
Because, anyway.
Fellas, if you're listening and you've got the silver rock and let it rock, don't go to the chemist and buy black dye.
Just for men and try and do it yourself.
Don't do it. Just let the silver rock.
I'm like a Top Deck, but reverse. You know the Top Deck chocolate at the moment?
Yeah.
Because my hair's still holding in, right? I've had grey hair on my chest forever.
Yeah.
For as long as I can remember, I got dad chest. I might have even been in high school and I got my first
hair.
grey. Yeah.
In your chest. Because the pubes go grey first.
Well, there's nothing going on there, thank God. So I'm okay down there.
No pubes?
No, I'm like a hairless cat. Or
That's
an
a
anteater.
thing, isn't it?
It's more
That's
an
a thing
anteater.
with the young men these days.
Anyway, that was more for comedy purposes. But I have that. It'll be all over when that happens. So I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But the chest was first, then it was worked its way up to the beard.
Yeah.
But the hair's still holding on. So I'm like, when I grow my beard, which I loved doing forever, but it is so white now.
Yeah.
But my hair is so dark that my mates are like, are you dyeing your hair?
It looks like you dye your hair.
I'm like, no, I am definitely not dyeing my hair.
And your eyelashes, because you got those real black eyelashes as well.
Yeah, but anyway, so I'm like the reverse Top Deck chocolate on my head. It's light on the bottom and dark on the top.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what were you talking about that you prepared?
Sliding doors for you and I.
Oh, that's right. Back to Gwyneth Paltrow.
So this has inspired me because I wanted to ask you about you and for us just to kind of, bit of chat.
Oh, God, don't we talk enough about ourselves between 5:30 and 9?
Well, see, I think this is interesting. I was going to ask you about career sliding doors, and I'll tell you first what happened to me, because if you didn't make that one choice, what could have happened. So for me, back in 1990, I was working with a piano player in a bar, singing with him in Toowoomba, my hometown in Queensland, and he cut out this little ad out of the local newspaper, the Chronicle was called, and he gave it to me, and it was to enter into Star Maker at Tamworth the following year in 1991. And don't even think how old you were.
I remember my year 3 teacher's name. Hi, Miss Smith.
Oh, hi, Miss Smith. So I ended up going into Star Maker, and I'd never even heard of it up until this point.
So, and Star Maker is...
It's the biggest talent quest in Australia. So Max Jackson, who we talk about often on here, she won it. The year before me...
For country music.
It's country music. Yeah, it's country in Tamworth. Keith Urban won the year before.
So
he handed me my
How do you
award.
get on? Do you have to audition to be part of it?
Well,
or
back then, and I do know now because I mentor a bunch of people who are trying to get into it, but back then I had some photos taken. I made
I like those glam shots that you used to see on Good Morning Australia.
pretty much.
Yeah.
And I made a tape and I wrote a song and recorded a tape. Literally just went to a little recording studio because I was already doing like jingles for this little recording studio just outside of Toowoomba. So went in, wrote a song, recorded that, sent that in, and you'd write a bio, probably by hand.
Yeah,
then,
for sure.
And sent that in. Anyway, I got invited down and went in it and won it. And that's where my career then just, went crazy.
Were any of your peers there at that time?
I didn't know a single person.
Yeah,
so
right,
I arrived in Tamworth and I knew nobody.
Sorry, that you auditioned with that you met later on in life. Go, hey, I auditioned, like I was in Star Maker with you. Because doesn't Lee Kernaghan tell the story about he was like Keith Urban was auditioned
and Troy Cassadaly.
Sorry, Troy Cassadaly.
Was there the year that Lee went in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nobody sort of went on to massive things from my year. But Keith Urban.
They found their star.
Well, since then there's been lots of big stars come out with Star Maker, and it's an amazing talent quest that I just love, and I'm so grateful for.
Sorry, Troy, I didn't mean to get you mixed up with Lee there.
I love it. They love each other. But then I met Rod. So if I hadn't have got that little piece of paper...
At what point?
At Star Maker. Now, I don't remember meeting him that night. He remembered meeting me because at that point, country music was looking... Because you didn't have, Spotify and any social media back then. So all of country music was coming to the Star Maker talent quest to see who might be the next star.
And if people are just stumbling across this pod now, Rod is your husband.
Rod is my husband, yes.
Yeah.
So, and Rod, a musician, record producer, he actually produced the song that Keith Urban won with the year before.
Holy moly.
And so he came along to see who it was, and he says he met me backstage, but I was so overwhelmed. I don't remember meeting him until about 3 or 4 months later.
Well, of course he's going to remember meeting the young blonde bombshell who's just won. And who's this muso that's got long hair you're not going to remember him, eh?
Well, no, I didn't. And I was pretty overwhelmed, though. You can imagine what I would have been like at that age.
Yeah.
And so that my whole country music career took off. And then...
So how quickly from winning that were you like then doing like Hey Hey and all that kind of gig?
It wasn't that long.
Yeah.
So what happened was Hey Hey It's Saturday and the midday show and all that wonderful television back in the 90s that gave artists an opportunity to get exposure Australia-wide.
Oh, and networks that used to put on TV shows that be able to produce live TV.
That's right. Yeah. So I was on that long before my albums went platinum and stuff.
Right.
And even before I had a record deal. So I had this one funny thing happen one time. I had decided because I'd moved to Sydney and I told every boyfriend that ever tried to be my boyfriend.
Is that when you moved to the Northern Beaches?
Moved to the Northern Beaches, making no money. And I'm on Hey Hey It's Saturday and all those shows, but zero money's coming in except I'm singing in a wine bar on a Thursday night for $60.
Not the Cremorne Hotel.
Yes.
At Minsky's?
I think so, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
it would have been for sure. Oh,
and there was
was
3 or 4 guys that would come in and they hated country music, so I couldn't do any country music. So I was, and $60 a week was what I was making, and I'm trying to pay rent and all that sort of stuff.
Jesus.
And so I decided to go on the dole. And because I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm not going back to Toowoomba. I want this to work. I'll just do this until touring takes off. So I'm standing in the line, the dole queue back then, and I look up. And on the morning breakfast show was from Friday before I'd recorded a segment with Bert Newton. And I'm like, this is a moment I'm in this line to collect the dole and I'm on the television and everybody probably thinks I'm successful at this point. And I wasn't. At that point, I turned around and left. I never went on the dole. That was like, I can't do this. And I never did. And I just made it work.
And
so
I think also for those maybe of the younger audience, the idea that like we only had 4 TV channels, because SBS hardly got reception, right?
Yes.
So that maybe you had 5. So you had the 3 free-to-air networks, the ABC and SBS, right?
Yes.
They were the 5 channels. So, but the ABC has always been the ABC, but like the Good Morning Australia with Bert Newton.
Channel
10, Belvedere would do the rhymes and stuff.
That's right.
Like, to be on a show like that, you had easily millions of eyes.
That's right.
Watching at that time, whereas it's so diluted now. Like the morning shows,
Totally.
I think Sunrise and the Today Show, Sunrise might get 300,000, Today Show's around the 200,000 mark, but Bert would pull in those numbers that are just things that stations would dream of these days.
That's
so
right.
the exposure you get from doing something like that is huge.
And Midday
Midday with, was it Ray or Kerry Ann?
Mostly Ray Martin.
Ray,
Yeah, it goes
and
back
Jeff
that far.
Harvey on the
Jeff
piano?
Harvey was on the piano, and then Hey Hey It's Saturday and all those shows. So I started becoming quite a regular on those because I was pretty much the only female country singer in Australia, kind of at that stage of career, and it's kind of, I guess, a bit like what Max Jackson is doing these days. But there was not really. These days, there's so much competition. There kind of wasn't back then. Country wasn't cool, and so there's that happened, which a couple of turning points for me right there. Meeting Rod, also, I might not have met him, and I might have married somebody else, which takes me back to. I was a hairdresser before that, and
In Toowoomba.
In Toowoomba, and every time a boy would ask me out on a date, I'd be like, "No, I'm moving to Sydney to be famous," which was really stupid in hindsight. I should have just.
Is that what you told the basketballer?
Yes, yes. So this is the other thing. If I hadn't have met Rod, if I hadn't have gone in Star Maker and got that little tiny piece of paper out of the local newspaper, Pop Dickerson was his name. He was a quite well known American basketball player, like 6'6". He would come in every afternoon into the hairdressing salon, and I'd be
He wasn't coming in for foils.
no, I'd be standing there like putting rollers in a little old lady's hair, and I'd just look up like this to him. He'd go, "Hey girl, what do you think? What would you come out this?" And I'm like, "No, sorry."
What
thank
was he
you."
doing in Toowoomba? Like, no diss on Toowoomba, but why was he there?
Well, he was playing basketball. I don't know. That's a good
Okay.
question that I've never got to ask him, but he was quite
Might have been in witness
persistent.
protection. It might not have.
and he seemed like a nice guy, but that was a no.
Wow.
And then the other thing was in hairdressing, there's because Toowoomba is in the middle of a lot of like regional farming areas. So back then, all the farmers would come into Toowoomba to get their shopping and groceries and doctor's appointments and things like that. So get their hair done. And this one very good looking, I can't even remember his name, cow cocky, used to come in his Mercedes. And
A what did you say?
a cow cocky.
What's
That's
a cow cocky?
a guy who works on a cattle farm, who owns a cattle farm.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
A cow cocky.
Okay.
And he would come in a lot. And he was blonde, blue-eyed, like very handsome, and ask me out on a date.
Like the guy who would be the most popular on Farmer Wants a Wife.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And then I said no, but my best mate Nat said yes, so she went out on a date with him. But it didn't work out for her. But I often think if I had have said yes and followed that, I could have been living
Completely different life.
in Longreach or in Dolby
On a station
or on
somewhere.
a station. I could have been a farmer's wife. So you kind of think of those turning points.
From that moment, you don't remember meeting Rod.
No.
To then you guys like hooking up. What was the period of time between the Star Maker and
Hooking up.
going, hey, let's give this a crack as a relationship? What was that time?
Well, straight from Star Maker, we went on the road with Rod's band, whose band was called the Danglin Brothers, and Keith Urban. We went out touring, so I kind of started to get to know him back
Okay.
in '91, and
Yeah.
then I was working with a record producer, Garth Porter, who was the keyboard player in Sherbet, and Garth was making everything turn to gold. That he was producing Lee Kernaghan, and anything he touched kind of was successful. And Rod was kind of his right hand man. So Rod was in every songwriting session. Rod wrote "Girls Night Out" with me. We weren't a couple.
Right.
He wrote a lot of my.
Did you
songs.
like him? Were you like this guy, or was
Yes.
it professional, or were you like, oh, there's something more here, but
No,
I
not
don't
yet.
know, or-
I thought he was the nicest person
Yeah.
I could ever possibly meet. And I just thought, how could anybody be so nice? But he was married with kids.
Ah, okay.
And I had a
that's where
boyfriend,
there was
David.
still a crossover. Right.
Yeah, so at this point, I'm not at all thinking that.
No, because why would you? He's married.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
honest to God, absolutely not. I've just thought, God, he's a nice person. And we get on really well, but no flirting, nothing.
Yeah.
And then after 4 years,
Wow.
he split up with his wife and I'd split up with David, and we hooked up. And how it happened.
Then you're making sweet music together,
Yeah.
riding off into the sunset.
How it happened was the backup singer in my band, we were drinking after a show and we'd said, oh, if you could, and we're early 20s here, if you could kiss any bloke in the country music industry, who would it be? And,
Who would they be expecting you to say in that situation, do you reckon? Like, would
Keith Urban?
Yeah.
Probably.
Was this?
Or Lee Kernaghan,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
Troy Cassar-Daley was. Troy was probably not quite. He was a bit younger. He might not have quite appeared yet.
What about was his James Blundell?
James Blundell. Yeah, he was around. So yeah, that's the answer.
Way
Everyone's-
out west where the rain don't fall.
Yeah, that was the answer. But no, and I went, obviously, Rod McCormack. And Carol went, oh, really? Oh, my God. So she ran straight to him. And she said, did you know Gina likes you? And I was like, oh, my God, did he say that? So it was his birthday while we were on tour. And I said to him, I'd said to him, and no, nothing yet. But we'd been talking a lot, and I knew because Carol had told me
So
he liked me.
You knew that he knew that you liked him.
Yeah. So I said to him, I got him a bottle of red wine and a rose, which I took out of the rider. And I said at midnight, close your eyes, and I put your hands out. So he put his hands out, and I gave him a rose, which someone gave me, and a bottle of rosé. Oh, not rosé, a bottle of red wine out of my rider, and I kissed him, and he kissed me back. So I made the first move. Yeah,
that's so
isn't
good.
that lovely, lovely story? But and then, but it does get me thinking sometimes all those little things that happen that just change the trajectory of your life.
Yeah.
And, even radio. So my chosen charity on the coast is the Central Coast Stars, which is like Dancing with the Stars, the TV show.
Is this what we're doing in a couple of weeks?
You and I are doing it, and that's been my chosen Central Coast charity for a long time.
Cancer Council New South Wales.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it for 14 years or whatever, or however long it's been going, almost, missed a couple. Well, I was doing the Sonia Kruger bit backstage when the dancing is finished and talking to them and having a couple of champagnes and interviewing, and I didn't know that Shane, with a Y, was in the audience.
That's who is the content director here. Yeah.
And Maltz was dancing. Who's the big boss?
Maltz was dancing?
He danced in it, and he was hilarious. And I didn't know who he was.
I would pay good coin to see some footage of that.
Well, there'd be some around. And apparently Shane said to me, only once I was here, he said, we'd had our eye on you for ages. We thought you'd be good at radio, but we thought you were too busy and you wouldn't want to. And
you said, well, I'm not busy at all.
And then I was hosting out the front with another host.
Who was it?
Rabs.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, who I love.
Oh, so was that while you were doing the show, or he was just doing it because...
No, it's once we were doing the... No, I wasn't doing the show.
So it was pre-radio show. So Rabs was doing it because of Star.
Yes.
And you were doing it because you're Gina Jeffries.
That's right.
Okay.
So I didn't know him yet.
Yeah.
And so, as you can imagine, I'm down the back having champagne and stuff because it's really loose out the back and I'm getting it, just
So when we
stuff.
are doing the onstage stuff, is it going to be loose? Are we going to have champagne?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
And so I came upstairs at the end because I'm down the back of Laycock Theatre. I came upstairs at the end and I've had a couple of champagnes, not a lot because I'm working, but, fun. And I said to him, I'd love to be on radio. I'd love to be on radio. And he told Shane and Maltz, and on that Monday, I came and just mucked around, and then by Tuesday I'd been offered a job on radio, which I wasn't expecting and I wasn't looking for at all.
But this is the thing, isn't it? If a lot of the time, if you don't ask, what's that thing? If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
Right? Or if you don't drink champagne, you don't get. but in serious, I love that. Isn't
that crazy how all those sequence of events could have gone in so many different directions? And what I wonder, and I think about this all the time, is did the universe have this in mind, or is it just choices that we made is why we're here and we end up with our partner and you end up with a great job you love and, my career. I felt like
the nature versus nurture kind of thing.
Yeah,
Was it always going to be this way?
I always thought with singing, that was always going to be, because from little I would get up and sing in front of everybody, and that's definitely my destiny and how I saw myself going. But all the other stuff, I think, is it, have you got one soulmate? Have you, what... And
I don't know if there's one soulmate, but I think you're very lucky if you do find someone who is yours. Yes. If you know what I mean. I think there could potentially be more than one person for you.
Yes, you just have to find them.
But you have to find them because some people might not find that person.
Ever,
right?
Yes.
But I do think there isn't only one person. I do think there's more than one person that could be with you.
Yes, that you're compatible.
But, you've got to be lucky to find one of them.
That's right. That's right. But doesn't it get you thinking like, oh my God, how your life turns out and how lucky how lucky I am that I made those choices. And God, imagine though, I could have been married to a really rich farmer right now, just kicking back.
You would have loved it.
I actually would. I like hard work. I
would have
do.
loved it.
I love being out in the yard and all that sort of stuff. And I would have, I grew up in a country town.
Yeah.
Dad was a builder, Mum was a hairdresser.
But you wouldn't have known any different either.
I wouldn't have known any different, and I would have just probably been, because I'm a really happy human.
Is it a cow cocky?
Cow-cocky.
With a cow cocky.
Yeah.
Just rolling in to get the groceries into Toowoomba.
Yeah. It's fun to think about. And I know we've taken a long time on me because I was going to ask you about you.
It's a podcast. We're at 20 minutes. Do you reckon we'll do a mid-roll in this? Should we take a break and come back? All right, we'll come back with more of the uncut, behind-the-scenes Gina and Matty podcast in just a sec. All right, welcome back to the second half here. It's been a big first half. The boys are giving 110%, and we're back at Gina and Matty with our behind-the-scenes podcast. Does this mean we're allowed to swear, CJ?
No.
Oh, that's bull. I could have said that's beep that one. So we were G was giving us a bit of an insight into some sliding doors in your life.
Yeah, how I ended up here. So I am so curious.
Do you want to know about me?
I really, really do. So,
what do you want to know? What do you want to know? I don't have any sheets, so I'm going off the top of my head.
So my two things today were a career sliding door and a personal life sliding door. So what choices, can you rewind back to one moment that you think changed your path in your career and ponder on maybe what?
Well, I know the moment. I know the moment exactly. I wouldn't be where I am today without the, I guess, support of a couple of guys who do breakfast radio in Sydney, Merrick and Rosso, Merrick Watson, Tim Ross. I used to listen to them religiously when they came over to Nova from Triple J. And I took the punt. I rang up the radio station and I was on the air quite a bit. And then I took the punt one Saturday. Now, thinking about it now after working in the industry for 20 years, the fact that this even paid off just blows my mind. But I knew that one of their birthdays was coming up. So I went into the station on must have been a Saturday. When now thinking about it, there's no one at a radio station on a Saturday.
That's right.
There might be one announcer and maybe the street team. And I made some profiteroles because I was a pastry chef before I got into radio. And I made some profiteroles and I wrote like happy birthday on top of each profiterole and I took them into the station. And I thought I knew where Nova was. I walked around Piermont in Sydney and I was like, I don't know where I am, to be honest. Found the address and then there was like it's level 5 of a building in Piermont and then you get to the bottom and the sliding doors were closed. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing.
How are you even going to get up?
Yeah, so I'm calling the studio number, no one's answering, and then I buzzed a number and someone answered, and that someone goes by the name of David Post. And he came downstairs and I said, look, I've got these profiteroles from Merrick and Rosso. And he's probably just looking at me going, oh my God, what is this 18-year-old?
18.
Super, no, I would have been 17 or maybe 18. 18-year-old super fan doing with a bit of listener food. Giving it to Merrick and Rosso.
Because we know how you feel about listening.
Yeah. So I've handed it over to David and he has taken it inside and then I get a phone call on Monday from Merrick and Rosso saying we got your food. Mez's birthday's coming up a little bit later on. Would you like to come into the studio and make a cake?
You left your phone number?
Yeah. Left my phone number.
Yeah.
All the details. Then they got me in. I went into the station. I made a upside-down pineapple cake for Merrick's birthday in the Nova studios. They said after that, hey, would you like to come and work for us? We like the cut of your jib, Rosso said to me. I remember it. And then I said yes. I went home. I told my parents. Dad said, finish your apprenticeship. Yeah. So I did both. I'll go in and do the breakfast radio show as just the bitch.
Yeah.
And then I'd go and work in the bakery after that, finish my apprenticeship. Apprenticeship finished and I went and worked full-time with the boys. Nova didn't pay me. There was no position available at the time.
Like
so
an intern?
No, nothing. So Merrick and Rosso paid me themselves to work on their show. Yeah, so they paid me themselves to work on their show for about 6 months before they created. It's amazing to think. Like you look at shows like, I don't know, Kyle and Jackie O or Fitzy and Whipper, Christian O'Connell. They have these production teams that are like 8, 9, 10 people deep. for Sydney Breakfast, when American Rosso were number one, there was them, a news person, a sports guy, and one producer. There was not even a phone operator role available.
Kidding?
So they made the role available. I did that, and then
The phone operator.
yeah, so I was just in there for four hours maybe, answering the phone calls, putting them through to air. And
Show us
then,
one.
No, it was just like, hi, thanks for calling American Rosso. What can we do for you? And they'll be like, I just want to speak to the boys. And like, yeah, well, you got to do more than just get on air and speak to the boys. You got a story for us, or that kind of stuff. So, okay, put them on hold, type up on the screen, hey, John from St Clair's got a story. Do you want to talk to them or not? That kind of stuff, and then go. And then did that, and then I ended up staying there for 10 years and ended up as 2IC of programming.
2IC of programming. So you
program
literally
director.
climbed your way to almost the very top.
Yeah, and then I got long service leave came around, and I was like, you know what, I've kind of reached my limit here.
Yeah.
I love Nova. I grew up there, but it was time to move on. I got a little bit stagnant in the role I was in, and then so said my goodbyes. But yeah, so. Funnily enough, the David Post, who took the profiteroles that day, is also our audio producer.
Isn't that crazy?
Gina and Matty breakfast show. He worked on the American Rosso show at the time.
That's crazy.
And Shane with a Y, our boss, I was his boss at one point as well.
Oh, you can't believe that. And radio's so small, isn't it? Everybody kind of knows each other. It's like
really
the country
like
music industry.
I without a doubt. So and it's taken me a long time to sort of get my head around, because I always was like, I had big imposter syndrome from coming from being a pastry chef into radio and going, I've just been so lucky. I was lucky. I was at the right place at the right time. But also, it's once you get that spot, it's what you do with it.
Yeah.
And probably only in the last couple of years have I sort of been able to reconcile and be okay with going, you know what, I was really lucky.
Yeah.
I was in the right place at the right time, but then I worked my ass off when I had those opportunities to learn and just soak up as much information from every single person that I could in that station. I worked as a receptionist, so I learned how sales worked. I learned how agency versus direct sales worked. I learned what the production people did. I worked what the street team did. I worked out what the promotions team did. I knew every facet of that company like the back of my hand. I knew every secret of every person in that building, so I blackmailed them so they'd keep me in a job. No, but
And
so
you've only just let go more recently, the imposter syndrome.
yeah, only in the last couple of years.
Really?
Only in the last couple of years because even then, like I went on and I went and worked at the Australian Radio Network, and I did network drive. So I was on air in Sydney and Melbourne doing the drive show there. Firstly when it was Mix FM, and then it changed to Kiss. So Kyle and Jackie O were the breakfast show, and I was the drive show with Rosso. And even then, I was like, I don't belong here. Like there was a part of me that was always like, I still don't feel like I belong. But only in the last couple of years, I'm like, that's bullshit, because I've worked really hard on my craft and know that there's a reason why I'm here.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense, without sounding like a dick.
No, you're amazing, and you've worked, because you said your first go at paneling.
I didn't know what I was
just
doing.
Pretended you knew what to do.
I remember speaking to a guy, Ben Harrison, in production, and it's like, they've offered me a paneling shift and I don't know how to panel. And he said, do it. And I was like, but I don't know. And he's like, just learn.
One way to learn.
Yeah, just learn. And I was like, oh God. He's like, I didn't know what I was doing when I first started, but I said I could do it. And then you just learn on the spot.
You just do. But I think everyone suffers imposter syndrome. I mean, you even think about a doctor who's trained for 8 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Their first day, their first operation.
Yeah.
They must be like, oh God, what if they figure out I don't know it? The only way is to get years and years of experience at anything. And there's not really training for radio. There wasn't around when you started.
Well, there was, and that was part of. There was it's called AFTERS, the Australian Radio and Television School, and so there was a.
Did you go there?
No, and it costs a fortune.
But it's not about that. It's about your personality.
And when I was working in the bakery, I learnt how the music was scheduled on radio, because I was starting my first year apprenticeship. I was starting at midnight and I was working through till 10 in the morning. So your friend is either the one guy you're working with or the radio. And we used to listen to the radio all the time. It was Today FM, and it was Zoe Sheridan and Lizzie Lovett that used to do mid-dawns. And I worked out that the really popular songs were played once every 3 hours. So if I wanted to ring up and get on air, all I had to do was wait for about 2.5 hours and I hadn't heard Cher Believe. I'd ring up and go, hi, I'm just wondering if I could request Cher Believe. And they're like, oh yeah, hang on a sec. And they'd press record.
You kidding?
So then they would put me on air because they knew they had to play that song. So they'd have it in there. So then I worked out. So the popular songs were every 3 hours, and then the next lot were 4, the next lot were 5. So I worked out that's how they were programming it. So then I knew how to ring a radio station to then be able to get on air.
And then how did you transition? Because you just spoke a lot about all the behind-the-scenes stuff and programming and all that. How did you end up behind the stick?
On air?
Yeah.
I was doing community radio at the same time as when I was doing the street team stuff. So come over, we got icy cold cans of Coke and copies of Dolly magazine. So that was my first on air, like at Nova, was being in the cars handing out the free stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was doing a community radio show on Swar FM in Blacktown in Sydney with a mate of mine, Fridgie, and we did the 10 p.m. till midnight slot, and we got to pick our own music, pick our own content, and we were just big, like American Rosso, Andrew Denton, Wendy Harmer fans, so we sort of just tried to do our own version of a breakfast show that we did there. And then the first time I got on air was the night, but in a big proper metro market.
Yeah.
It was Sydney nights. It was the 7 o'clock show, the night show on Nova, and the co-host at the time, one of the hosts came in inebriated and was not allowed to go on air. So I was the crazy, wacky nights guy doing the stunts on the streets, and they said, look, there's no one else. Will you jump on air with who else was on the other co-host?
Yeah.
And I said, absolutely.
Oh
And then
gosh.
within 3 months, I was on air permanently. So I just, it was one of those sliding door moments. If
Yes.
X hadn't come in drunk, he would have still been on air.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have got my crack, and then the show wouldn't have changed hands and things wouldn't have moved, and I wouldn't have been given the night show. So that's another one. And it's a lot of right place at the right time. So that's where that imposter thing comes from as well. But it's like, but I was there. There was a reason I was the nights guy, and that's why that happened. And then the same thing, because I met my wife in radio. Another co-host of mine, Maz, was working as the head of the promotions department. She hired this girl called Bella to drive around in the cars.
Yeah.
And she was hot and I liked her. She was a vibe, but I always thought she was out of my league.
Yeah.
And then I ended up getting moved from one show and put on to nights, and I wasn't too happy about it. But then I realised I was working with this Bella chick. I was like, you know what? It's not too bad. I get to hang out with this cool chick. And then we spent sort of 6 months working together. Had no idea that she was even into me. She pursued me at someone's engagement party, and we made out, and it's 20 years later. That's that sliding doors moment where I took the gig to work on that when I didn't really want to work on that show, and I took it anyway. And then because I did, I was gifted Bella, which was so nice.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That to me feels like absolute fate.
Oh, 100%.
How that all unfolded.
And I knew the minute I met her. Like, well, I don't actually remember the first time I met her, which is a sore point. I know with Bella and I, she's like, how can you not remember? I remember the first time I met you. I came in for my job interview. You were working on reception, and you were just like this. You just walked in and you're like, hey, my name's Matt. And I don't remember that meeting at all. I remember a later one, but she always reminds me of that. But I feel very blessed to have met her in that way. Is this really interesting or not?
I love it.
Okay.
I love it. So if you hadn't have met Bella, if she hadn't have come in, like a sliding door for her.
Absolutely screwed. Without a doubt. I would be, because I was just I would never pick up on signals if girls were into me.
Yeah.
I was just, and I hated dating. I hated it with a passion.
Yeah.
Because I don't love, like, oh, God, okay, how many brothers you got?
Yeah.
When did you go to school? I find that really inane and boring.
Yeah.
So I hated dating. So I don't know. I don't know. I would be like a lonely old man with a cat in a room somewhere. I reckon. I even hate cats, and I'd get one because I just want some sort of company. But yeah, I don't know. I'd be screwed. I'd be screwed if I hadn't met
You didn't
her.
have anyone else that you kind of were thinking, oh, this could be the one?
Oh, well, no, not that I thought that could be the one. Bella does tell stories in that first 6 months of us before we were dating, how I would drive the cars around, because like I was the guy that would do the crosses and Bella would like assist, and she hates it when I talk about that, because I was like, you were kind of my assistant. She's like, now I can't even like leave the house without it. Yeah. But I was going and taking her to different locations around Sydney where girls that I was seeing at the time were working. So I'd go to the Castle Towers
my
shopping
God.
centre and they'd do a cross from there because there was a girl that
You
worked
did
there.
not.
I'd go to Michelle's Patisserie at Lambie Heights and do the cross for there because I was seeing the girl who was working at Michelle's Patisserie. I'd go, and she's like, there was a reason why I didn't make a move, is because you just had all these girls in different parts of Sydney that you were seeing, and you were taking me there to see them.
And were you taking it there to
Not at all. I was just doing it because I was like, hey.
That's what you were doing already.
I'm Nova Guy. I can bring the car to your workplace and do a cross, and maybe you'll get more customers, and maybe you'll stay with me a little bit longer.
Oh my God.
How tragic, how sad.
I love
anyway,
your love story.
this is boring. Yours was very interesting. Mine wasn't.
No, yours is really interesting. I love it. One more question before.
Oh, God. Okay.
How old were you when you realised you got the gift of the gab?
I knew I wanted to be a performer or pretty much all my life.
Yeah.
I loved attention. But I just didn't find what it was straight away.
Yeah.
I wanted to be on stage. I wanted to do Broadway shows. I wanted to be a singer, but I just was no good at it. I loved dancing. I was okay as a dancer, but I was no good. Stand-up comedy scares the shit out of me. So I love comedy. I'm a comedy tragic. I love comedians, even though they're some of the darkest and twisted most people you'll ever meet. There's something intriguing about them, but it wasn't until probably high school when I was like, radio's my jam. And I remember being at a house party at, I think it might have even been Alison Batty's house. And I remember sitting around and going, I'm going to do a breakfast radio show one day, and telling everyone, I'm going to do a breakfast radio show one day. And they're like, oh yeah, good luck with that. And I was like, no, I reckon I just, there's something it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then the moment that I did my first ever, even it was just a fill-in, like Merrick and Rosso went on holidays and I did like the best of show and I just threw to the pieces. I was like, Jesus, I called this when I was in year 9. I can't believe it's happening, which is a weird thing. Like, I don't know how you felt when, you wanted to be a singer, you won the Star Maker competition, you won Golden Guitars, that was your dream.
Yeah.
It was a very strange feeling achieving something that you thought might be impossible, and that's your dream, and then you go, oh, that's what that is. What do I do now? That's the feeling I had.
Really?
I was like, oh God, I set a goal that I had from when I was a kid. I've achieved it. I feel a little bit empty now because I don't know what's next.
Yeah, and once it's a really big goal like yours and mine, no disrespect to when you just wanted to be a baker and I wanted to hairdress.
But that's still a goal. When you reach something and you go, that's what I want to do, and you do it. I had a really strange feeling after it. I was like, oh God, have I peaked way too early? Because I was 25 and I was like, shit, I don't know what I'm going to do now because I've done it.
I remember the same thing happening for me really young too, and just embracing it. But also I had that thing of, it's like now I study it, manifestation. I thought it and I believed it and it happened. That's happened for you too. You put it out there and it happened.
And I'm so skeptical of it. I'm so scared. The secret, the manifest. But Bella's like, you realise all of the big things that happen in your life, you have actually manifested. I'm like, I don't know.
No, you did.
And I know, and it does my head in when I think about it because I'm like, it is kind of true.
Well, now,
but that was a feeling that I couldn't shake for a long time, and I was just wondering if you ever had it. But no, you embraced it.
Absolutely,
I felt empty. I felt a little lost.
I absolutely had the imposter syndrome thing. I'd be on stage at like gimpy muster in front of 50,000 people, and I'd be thinking to myself, God, what if they work out I don't know what I'm doing? That was running through my head while there's dialogues going on while I'm singing, because all of my peers they were full pedigree. Casey Chambers came from the Dead Ringer Band.
Yeah,
famous
big family.
Becky Cole, famous mum. They all kind of came from it. And I'm this little girl that came from a country town in Queensland with no friends yet and no family in it. So I was for a long time going, oh my God, they're all going to figure out soon that I don't know what to do. And same thing right now.
What do you reckon? Are we going to pull stumps?
Yeah,
are we good with that?
That was fun.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, are we going to do this weekly? Not just talk about ourselves, but do a behind-the-scenes potty?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. Thanks, Siege. You got anything you want to contribute? Just finally, producer Caitlin. Should we call you Caitlin on the podcast just to mix it up a little bit?
Serious.
Yeah.
No, I think it was really fascinating seeing you guys and hearing about your backstories and how everything happened.
Have you got any questions? You got any comprehension that you've been listening?
No, I think you guys talked for a bit too long.
She wasn't listening.
Oh, shut up. All right.
Let's quiz her after we get off air because she wasn't even listening.
No, she's sending emails. All right, bye.
Bye.
Gina Gina and Matty's exclusive podcast.